This is Amud Yomi, Gemara Shabbos Daf Yud Amud Aleph. And we pick it up at the top of Yud Amud Aleph, and we're in the middle of discussing what is allowed to be done before Mincha. We just finished that there's a higher level of preparation that one needs to do for tefillah, which is the reason that even a simple act of girding, of putting one's belt back on, is because there's a halacha of hikon nikras Elekecha Yisrael. We're holding 8 lines down. The first word on line is Elekecha Yisrael. Rava Bar Ravuna Rami Puzmaki Umatzli would put on his shoes and he would daven in Amar Hikon Nikras. The practice of Rava Bar Huna, how he would prepare for tefillah. Rava Shadik Lima Facha Yidei Umatzli. Rava would take off his jacket and he would put his hands together and he would daven Amar Ka'avda Kame Mare. He said like a servant in front of his master. Amar Ravashi Chazina Le Rav Kahana. I saw Rav Kahana that what would he do? Kika Tzar Ba'alma, when there was Tsar in the world, Shadi Galima, he would take off his coat, and he'd put his hands together and he was Zavin Amar. And he said, Ka'avda Kame Mare Kika Shlama. And when there was peace, when he didn't have to daven for a particular problem, what would he do then? Lavish. He would dress umiskasi, and he would cover umisatev, and he would wrap himself, whether that means with a talis, or more particularly over here, it doesn't mean a talis. It means you would put on a special beged, a special garment to daven, umatzli, and you would daven, amar hikon likras, elekecha Yisrael. So we're seeing that this lin of hikon requires a higher level, requires that tefillah is not a mundane action, and we have to do something, even something physical, to show that we're doing as we talk to Hashem. Rava Chazi Rav Amnuna Kamarach B'Tzlusa. Rava once saw that Rav Amnuna was davening very long. Amar, he said, "What's going on? You're leaving the eternal world. And you're dealing with Chai Yisha, meaning you should be learning Torah. That's Chai Olam. What are you doing with Chai Yisha, which is davening? Who's Savar? What does Rav Amnuna hold? Zman Tefillah Lechad, Uzman Torah Lechad. Yes, of course, Torah is of paramount importance, but each has its own time. Gemara tells the story 3 lines before the wide lines. Rav Yirmi Avi Yosef Kamid Rav Zera. Rav Yirmi was sitting before Rav Zera, Rav Yosef Shmaitza, and they were sitting and discussing a halacha negelit aluye, and it was late to daven. The commissary Rav Yirmi quickened to stand up. Kari Ali Rav Zera Maser Aznai. He turns his ear Mishmaya Torah from learning Torah. Gam Tfilas Teiva. Rav Zera wasn't happy. Again, Zman Torah Lechad, Zman Tfilah Lechad. So continues the Gemara, and now we go back to the din in the Mishnah. On the last narrow line, Yud Amud Aleph, the Gemara goes back to the Mishnah. As the Mishnah taught us yesterday, that any of these activities are not allowed to be done, haircut, meals, bathhouse, etc., before one davens. But once one starts, he does not have to stop to daven. He has to stop for Shema, but not to daven. So says the Gemara, din. So the next item on the list is a din Torah. So when is it considered that the din Torah has begun, and therefore one would not have to stop in order to daven? Rav Yirmi Rav Yoina Chadam Mishayisatvu Adayanim, when the Dayanim would wear special robes, when they wrapped themselves in those robes, Chadam Mishayittichu Palidinim, when they actually start presenting the arguments in the Din Torah, and says the Gemara V'lai Pligi on the second white line, Ada Aski V'asi Bedina. One is talking about where the judges will already in middle of sitting for that day, so it's only when this case starts. V'adalaski V'asi Bedina. So that's when they get dressed to dan the case. Ravami Ravasi of Yosef Vigarsi Beimei Amuda. Ravami and Ravasi, they would sit and learn between the pillars of the Beis Medrash. In each and every hour, they would bang on the door, the bolt of the door literally, and say, if anyone needs, let him come and we'll sit and we'll judge the court case. They would sit and they would paskin court cases the whole day. And they were weak. They didn't eat the whole day. They were down in cases. Tanalu Rav Chia bar Rav Medifti. Rav Chia bar Rav Medifti said to them, it says that the people stood on Moshe Rabbeinu from morning till evening. Really? Do you think that Moshe sat, and judged cases the whole day? So when did Moshe Rabbeinu teach Torah? You know what we have to learn? Any dayan, any judge that dons correctly, even if it's 1 hour, and 1 hour means for a short amount of time, still just for that. It's as if you're partnering with Hashem in the creation of the world. It says over here, it says that the people stood on Moshe Rabbeinu from morning till evening, and says by the creation of the world, so it was not pshat that Moshe Rabbeinu necessarily judged cases literally from morning until evening, but rather even the short amount of time that he did, it's considered that he becomes a partner in the creation of the world. We're smack in the middle of the wide lines. The first word line is Vayihi. Continues the Gemara, Ad Mosa Yoshim Bedin. Okay, so you just told me that B'Etzem, theoretically, you don't have to judge the whole day. So until when? When do the Dayanim, when do they let us stop? Amrav Shishas Ad Zaman Suda. When the Zman of the Suda comes, which the Mefarshim explain it's the 6th hour of the day when Talmidei Chachamim eat. That's when they start the Dinei Torah, and that's when they could begin their meal. Amar Rav Chisda, my crow, where do we see this in a pasuk to save? That it's a negative thing to the land that the kings, they act as children, and whose ministers, they die in the morning. And praiseworthy is the land, Shamalkich ben Chayrin, they're free people of dignity, V'sarech, Beis Yechelu, B'gvura, V'loi b'shli, they eat at the right time, they eat for gvura, for strength, and not in drunkenness, B'gvura shel Torah, V'loi b'shtiya shel yayin. They fortify themselves with the strength of Torah, now drinking wine. That's the Talmidei Chachamim, eating at the 6th hour of the day, which is good for the body. Continues the Gemara, once we're on the topic of what is the appropriate time to eat, we're about 20 lines to the bottom. The first line is Bigvura, Tanu Rabbanan, Shari Shaina. If one eats in the first hour of the day, Meichel Ludin. It's the meal of Ludin. Ludin were people, says Rashi, quite crazy people, not just glutinous, but rather cannibalistic. They used to eat people, actually, and they would not be able to wait a moment for their meal, and therefore they ate in the first hour of the day. Shniya, the 2nd hour of the day, is Meichelistim, is when robbers eat. Rashi explains in Psachim that why they stay up the whole night doing their thievery, and then in the morning they're quite hungry, so the 2nd hour they're already eating. Shlisha is Meichel Yarshim. The 3rd hour is one with a lot of money, but it's one that gained that money through a Yerusha. He didn't work so hard. Therefore, he doesn't worry about Parnas, so he eats at the 3rd hour of the day. Revius is a more normal time, is Meichel Payalim. Hamishis is Meichel Kol Adam. Eini says the Gemara, really? V'amar Ababa, Revius Mantul Kol Adam. The 4th hour, not the 5th hour. Ella says the Gemara, Revius Meichel Kol Adam, Hamishis is Meichel Payalim. And the Brisa concludes, Shishis is Meichel Talmidei Chachamim. Mikan ve'ilach. From this point onward, it's Gezerik Even. Lechamos is like throwing a stone in a bag. Is that even though when you put something into a bag, it looks like it's there, but in reality, it's not. So too, if you eat after the 6th hour of the day, it only feels like you actually ate, but lamaisa, it doesn't actually aid your body. And it says Abaye, but if you eat in the morning, then you don't have to worry. It's not a problem. And of course, this is where it comes from. 6th hour of the day is basically Chatzois. And this is where it comes from. The one is not supposed to fast Chatzois, particularly on Shabbos and Yontif. But the statement of Abaye is a very large statement, la halacha. That's the reason that if one is ta'im imidi, someone had a cup of water in the morning, someone had a cup of coffee, then he does not have to be worried about not eating until Chatzos. So now we continue to the next topic of the Mishnah. Or actually, more particularly, not the next topic, but the previous topic of the Mishnah, which is back into the bathhouse. One is allowed to daven in a bathhouse. Says the Gemara, what? Meisvei. Says the Braisa, there's different areas in a bathhouse. And okay, we could envision this similar to the mikvahis that we have. You have the outer room that people are dressed. So over there, Yesha Mikro Tefillah, you could daven, you could learn. Say Shema and you could daven. And of course, you can say shalom to your friend. And you can put on tefillin in that room. You don't have to take off your tefillin. But now, what's the next room? The next room is the changing room. Some people are dressed, some people are not. So Yisham Sheila Shalom. In that room, you're allowed to say shalom. But you're not allowed to say Shema, you're not allowed to daven. But if you're wearing your tefillin, you don't have to take it off. But you can't put on tefillin in the first place. So that middle room, some people dress, some people undress, that's sort of in between. And then the next room, the inner room, the room in which you're actually going to go into the bath, where people are completely undressed. Over there, you're not allowed to greet your friend with the word Shalom. Shalom is name of Hashem. You can't daven, you can't learn. You take off your tefillin. You don't put on your tefillin. So says the Gemara clearly, you can't daven. So what did Rav Ada bar Ava mean when he said you could? He's talking about a bathhouse when there's no people there. The bathhouse on its own, it says Rav Ada bar Ava allows one to daven. But of course, if there are people undressed, you cannot. Ask the Gemara 1 second, 4 lines to the bottom. Without people. Basically, without sayah, meaning the stigma of a bathhouse, of a bathroom, is that which disallows one from davening. A new bathhouse, so it was never used yet. Asks the Gemara 1 second. It was a shaila that was posed to Ravina. That what is the story with his minu? The mere preparation and designation for a Beis Hakisei Mahu, what is the din? Do we say yesh zimun or ain't zimun? Do we say that the designation gives it the name and the status of a bathroom disallowing tefillah, or not? And there was no answer to this. Lavu adin the merchatz, you the same thing by merchatz. So how could Rav Ada bar Ava now say with conclusivity that you could daven in a bathhouse even when there's no people? What happened to the shayla of hazmana? Says the Gemara, Loi. It's not the same thing. He was talking about a bathroom, and this is a bathhouse. As we turn over to Yudam and Beis Dilma, Shiny Bisakise Demois. Whereas a bathhouse doesn't have the same level of remolis, it's not repulsive, and therefore, as the top Rashi speaks out, it's a bathroom. That's why there was a shayla if the designation disallows you from davening. But in a bathhouse, that's Rav Ada bar Ava's paskening that a new one that never used, you can daven in. We'll pick it up from here. B'siyata Dishmaya.